Well, hey, Northway, thank you so much for tuning in. This is our first ever episode of our brand new Behind and Beyond podcast. My name's Rebekah, and today I'm joined here with Dave.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Rebekah, thanks for doing this. So fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
thanks for being here.
Of course, I have to.
Me too. We're excited to get started. So why don't we get a little context for what this thing even is? So could you let us know what's the idea behind it and what are your hopes for it?
Yeah, so oftentimes when you write a sermon, there is let's say there's 3 points in the sermon. Mm-hmm. There's usually 4 and 5 points. You have no idea how much we cut whenever we practice, we write. I usually have a document called the gutter. It's all the stuff that I wanted to be able to say. I just didn't have time to be able to say. And so I thought, wow, the process, people ask about the process a lot. They want to know what was going on and why and what else did you want to say? And so I thought, hey, why don't we just take a shot? And I love taking shots, right? You never know until you try. So here we are. We're going to behind and beyond the sermons for this series and see what happens. So I hope you enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's think back to this Sunday. You were tasked with introing this entire
By tasked with, I tasked myself with that's a really funny phrase. Yes.
Yeah, you really can only blame yourself for that one because
I know.
Here you are.
That's right, my fault.
Yeah, you dealt yourself that.
My bad. Yeah.
So you had to intro the 10 Commandments, setting us up for 11 weeks of content. That's a lot of pressure, I'm sure. But take us back a little bit. What does it look like when you're wanting to decide a sermon series for thousands of people for 10 weeks. How did we get to the 10 Commandments? Why the 10 Commandments now?
Yeah.
How did you feel God leading you there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Lot of prayer. I mean, lot of prayer. I can't state that enough. Really just trying to hear, okay, God, what do you want us to teach on? What do you want us to spend time discipling on? What do you want in our hearts and our minds? And it just gets clearer and clearer and clearer. Sometimes I'll get with a group of people, so the teachers, and we talk about it and hear what's resonating. Discerning God's voice isn't just a one-person process. We do that in a group. Like if you're married, you and your wife or you and your husband, you are trying to discern God's voice. Like where's he leading and what is he saying to you guys? And so prayer, discerning conversations, and then it just gets clear. And then generally there's peace and excitement about it. And when I landed on the 10 Commandments, final decision, it was like, yeah, let's go. We haven't done this in a while. And I think it's really, really important to not just always be in the New Testament, but to spend time Old Testament, New Testament. And it's all about knowing, experiencing, and following Jesus. And this is a way where we get to know God more, his law, his commandment, and the beautiful story of the Exodus. It's incredible. I think we could spend 2 years working through that book. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How far in advance are we talking? Just out of curiosity.
I wish I could say back in January, but it's not. It's not back in January. So I want to say someone's going to say that's a lie. But back in May, June, I think I knew where we were going to go for this fall.
Yeah.
I have so here we are right now. This is September, end of September.
I'm pretty sure.
Almost October. We know where we're going to be through January. And then I don't have the series yet, praying through it for Easter, up until Easter. So usually 4 or 5 months ahead.
I think that makes a lot of sense because you're allowing, there is structure, but you're also allowing, God to speak. Yeah. And it's relevant to, what's the temperature, what's the culture, what's going on in our church today.
Yeah. So think about that. That's a great, am I allowed to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many times in life, this discipleship, right? We want God to give us 5-6 years from now. I want to know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 35 and when I'm married and what's my career because I'm 18 and I'm trying to choose
I feel
a major.
100%.
Right? You get that, right?
Yeah.
You guys are in that spot right now, you and your husband. I don't want to disclose too much about your life, but your career, dental school, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Lots of questions.
But I found God does it. God wants a relationship. He wants a connection. So it's usually in smaller chunks out ahead. And so I have rested in the fact that I can ask for 2 years from now and maybe God will answer that, but it's usually more just a little further out ahead. His word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. That lamp is not like a hunting spotter's lamp. I don't hunt. Right? Do you hunt?
No.
Okay. It's merely 3 or 4 feet out ahead. So I often think 3 or 4 months out ahead. That's sometimes God will answer the bigger long-term questions, but most times for me, it's been just out a little bit ahead so I stay tethered to him.
Yeah.
Again, discipleship, so I stay close. To be discipled by someone, you got to be close to them. right?
Yeah.
You want to pick up who they are. You want to learn sometimes just by being in the room with them. And prayer is being in the room with God. That's what I love about teaching. It's not just it's the encounter with God. Like right now, I'm working on next week's sermon, and you might not be able to tell right now, but I'm wrestling deep down inside.
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling with a concept and a point, and I think God has me right where He wants me.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I'm leaning in. I woke up this morning praying.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to sound super spiritual, but I don't have it yet. I'm not on the other side of that, and I'm frustrated. I'm like, okay, God, can I just have like an easy week in prepping for a sermon? And it's not about easy. I think it's about relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know which question I answered there, but
no,
I just started talking.
Yeah, that's what it's about. We're here for conversation.
Great.
So we'll take it wherever it goes.
Great.
So thinking back to 10 Commandments, I'm sure there's a lot of pros, cons when you're deciding things. What were some hesitations with covering a topic as, I guess, black and white, as the 10 Commandments?
Yeah. So deep in my heart is a lot of folks view God as that angry parent, the angry dad or the angry mom or the really harsh teacher or coach, someone who is in a position of authority who just lorded over you. And a lot of times we look at the 10 Commandments as, man, here's a harsh list. I got to follow these, and I'm not good at following these, so why even try, right? I really feel like it's important for us to get to know the heart of God and why He's giving us these laws. So this coming weekend, we're going to talk about not having any other God before Him. Is he arrogant? Is he like super just jealous and saying like, hey, yes, it's so easy to get there because that's our world. But God's doing something different there, in my opinion. And so the more we try to discover, like, God, this is about a revelation of who you are, the way it changes our perspective of the 10 Commandments. So that was like the heart of the intro. There was so much that I wanted to cover. There's a structure to the 10 Commandments. The first 4, I believe, are, talking about our relationship with God. The next 6 are about our relationship with each other. And you think about Jesus says, love your God, love the Lord your God, love others as yourself. He summarizes all 10 into 2, but I didn't have time to get there because I so wanted all of us to catch a glimpse of God who was interested in relationship first. That's a game changer for me.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
It blows my mind still.
And you settled on that. You framed the whole sermon in this idea of what is God's perspective when He gave the 10 Commandments. And for me, I think I've heard sermons about the 10 Commandments a whole life. No one's ever talked about
Was that the best one you ever heard?
100%.
Yes.
No one paid me to say that.
I'll start asking the questions now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
But how did you get there? I think, that has to be just revelation from God. Like, how did you land on, let's shift this and think, what is God's perspective of us?
Yeah. I don't know when it happened. It was probably 15, 20 years ago. I heard that phrase about God established a relationship before He set up all these rules. And so, 15, 18, 20 years ago, I'm new in ministry, and I realized, like, that phrase to me opened up this idea that, man, the scriptures aren't just about make sure you do all this right. They're a revelation to us about who God is. It's like a real chance to get to know our Creator. Like some people say it's His love letter. It is. It's a love letter from a loving Father. And so that for me changes my perspective. And I think about it with my kids. Like, I got to make rules for them. I have to set boundaries, right? Because I don't want them to get hurt, and I don't want them to have regrets in their life and have to. Experience isn't the only teacher we have to have in life, right?
Yeah.
We're given rules and guardrails to protect us from pain and from harm. And being a parent sometimes helps me at least just get to see a little bit more of what God is up to. So I think that also inspired me, sending my son off to college.
Yeah.
Traumatic moment for our family.
I can.
And you think a lot about, how did I do?
Yeah.
Where did I mess up? Like, if he struggles in the first month, you're like, that's my fault. I should have talked to him about this, or I should have. But then you, like, God's grace helps me realize, like, think about the relationship there.
Yeah.
And think about that at the end of the day, God is for him even more than I am for my son. And so that whole perspective has been sobering and beautiful. And like, parenting, here's a thought. Parenting isn't just about what we do for our kids. parenting is a journey where we get discipled by God as well. So sending Nico to college, I thought it's all about him. Get his dorm ready. That my wife took care of all that, right? Get him ready for academics and talk about a syllabus and all that kind of stuff. But God was doing something in me, in letting go and trusting in him as a parent. So I don't think I realized that back in May. I'm realizing that right now in this moment. In May was probably the most emotional moment for me. His graduation announcements arrived. Oh man, I lost it.
It just all got real.
It got real.
Yeah.
Like change was coming, and he was grown up. And seeing your pictures, everyone looks like an adult.
Oh yeah.
Sudden, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
Words of Priscov.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shift us a little bit just because I really want to talk about. You spoke about the 5 groups of people who how we respond to rules, and you went through a lot of different ones. I loved it personally because, shocker, I'm the stickler kind. Oh yeah.
Oh, no.
Love the rules.
That's great. Yeah.
Black and white.
Great,
You start talking about rules, I'm excited. So that gave it right away. My question for you was, you kind of gave yourself the more spiritual of the law.
Wasn't that? So when you're the teacher, you get to like call it what you want. Like sticklers, that's not like a good connotation.
No, I didn't like that at all.
Spirituals, that was so generous of me.
It was.
We're the spirituals. Yeah.
Yeah, convenient. Yeah, that's fine. We'll give you that.
Convenient.
But so for someone who is really rigid about the law and they view the 10 Commandments as people who break these, they're bad. I judge them. That's all sourced in pride, really. How could you speak to a little bit about how should we be viewing other people who we see breaking God's law?
Yeah.
How do we come from that place of humility of realizing our own shortcomings when it could be really easy to slip into that space of judgment?
I think for me in my life, I'm not necessarily a stickler, but gratitude is an under talked about, but deeply necessary value and virtue that we should lean into more and more and more. So to answer your question, the more you thank God for saving you and redeeming you, the more you become aware of your sin and your shame and your, oh man, I am not righteous, the less time you have to judge other people.
Yeah.
Like if we are more thankful, we're less judgmental, right?
Yeah.
And I also think gratitude breaks the hold of entitlement in our life.
Yeah.
So we can never be grateful about something that we feel entitled to. And so there's something about expectation and pride that is in the opposite direction of gratitude. Like gratitude humbles us because it acknowledges like, I'm not enough on my own. I can't keep all these 10 perfectly. And so I would just say, take time for all of us to thank God again for saving us. Like acknowledge our sin and our shame and our folly. Like I mess up all the time.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah. What do you think about the inverse? So someone who is more spirit of the law, and it's really easy to be like, man, those rules people are crazy. Like they're so, uptight.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does it look the same? Is it gratitude in the same way? Or
I don't know. I like being a spirit of the law.
yeah, exactly. But
spirit of the law feels like I think you have to humble yourself in a different way. Like and understand your effect on other people and your impact on other people. I think you have to humble yourself and realize the moral judgment that you think you are so strong in is actually not that strong. And so in a different way, when you look at your sin and your own shame, you realize, man, my morality is not what I think it is. It humbles you maybe from a little bit of a different angle. It's not about judgment. It's about like self-awareness. Like, oh man, my moral compass isn't as true north as I want it to be. So maybe my decision to operate outside of this, not maybe, it's a bad decision.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it gets you there.
Yeah.
Too. I think the key for that one was just that whole idea of like, I know when this law applies and when it doesn't.
Yeah.
We don't.
No.
We don't see as far into the world. And we're not aware of the common good as much as we like to think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, I feel like, especially for my generation, like people in their 20s and their 30s, it's really hard nowadays to believe strongly and speak out boldly about the relevance of the Old Testament today, the relevance of the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
It's a really, more, that's outdated. Those don't apply anymore. Could you share with us a little bit about how do we combat speaking to people today who just don't really want anything to do with it and think, you're all following a bunch of old rules?
Yeah. So if you need an entry point into the Old Testament, Jesus is perfect.
Yeah.
Right? And Jesus tells us, I came to fulfill the law. So that to me means the law. Okay, where are we at? Let's go back to the beginning. Where's the first set of laws? And by the way, they're actually not laws. They're words. Oh, nowhere in Exodus chapter 20. Well, we're going to talk about that this weekend, so preview. God doesn't say, like, I'm the Lord your God, here are my commandments. God literally spoke the 10 words. The original language is the Decalogue, 10 logos, 10 words. Anyways, but it is essentially their law. Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law. So if you want to know who Jesus is, if you're like, you can't just be a New Testament only person. I'm sorry. Like, let me just be direct. But if you feel like you are needing an entry point in the Old Testament, it's Jesus, because he fulfilled the entire law. And if you want to know, like, about his perfection and about what he fulfilled, look at the Old Testament law, and you get a glimpse of who Jesus was. He loved God perfectly, and he loved people perfectly. Yeah. And so the Old Testament is not irrelevant at all. It's a preview of Jesus revealed.
Yeah. I think that also answers the question that you mentioned in your sermon about how you said Jesus is all over the Old Testament,
Yeah.
And he's in the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
And I think for some people who are very literal, you can be like, I'm looking at these 10, there's no Jesus. Like, he's not here.
Yeah.
But I think that's so beautiful what you're saying of, you look at the New Testament, it's a mirror.
Yeah. So look at when Jesus was tempted after fasting for 40 days. And look at how every single opportunity, 3 of them, he comes back to quoting God's word. And what did he quote? He didn't quote Colossians or Galatians or Rome. He quoted the Old Testament. He was living. That was his food. That was his fuel to combat temptation. And if you want to say, like, so what does it look like to love only God and to not worship anything and not to, like, take his name and all that kind of stuff? Jesus did it right there. So he's living that out. It's a preview of how he would combat temptation and encounter the world. And at the end of the day, follow God perfectly.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. I think that's a great, even using that little bit of, okay, look back at when Jesus was tempted. Like, I think that's a great practical thing.
Yeah.
Just to take into our own conversations.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, I'm curious, is there anything we could take into this next week's sermon, or anything you hope that we would be preparing our hearts to hear on Sunday?
Now, as far as like this next week's sermon, so it's been 2 days. We're filming this. It's Tuesday, and this is going to be released on Wednesday. I would just say, like, are you still delighting in God's law? Have you meditated on it? It's been 2 days. Like, it is. I don't. Sometimes I lack words to say it, even, and in my own life. Like, God says, this is how you prosper. Like, so what do we do with that? Like, are we really so busy? And do we already have it all together that it's Tuesday and we can forget about that?
Yeah.
We're okay. Like, what's the urgency with which we receive God's word, myself included? Like, because I want to prosper. I want to have fruit born out of my life and my kids' life in good season. I don't want to wither, right? I want to be that Psalm 1 picture. And it always does come back to that question. I think it's a challenging question, is like, so was Sunday just an hour for me, or is it really transforming my approach every single day? And so I would encourage you to read the 10 Commandments, read Exodus chapter 20, and then read it again. And then as you're reading it like a third time, ask God, like, God, show me who you are, like, behind these 10 words or these 10 laws.
Yeah.
And it leads us to closer relationship with him. And that's where prospering and flourishing and freedom are ultimately found. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did.
But that's on my heart big time, that challenge piece to say, like, let's take this seriously.
Yeah.
Like, the world is swirling with things trying to grab our attention. But God is just saying, just focus here. I'll take care of the rest.
Yeah. I think that's a great encouragement for all of us as we, prepare for Sunday and prepare for what the Lord's going to speak through Dave to all of us. I think that's a great reminder for each and every one of us. Yeah. So thank you, Dave, for your time.
Thank you, Rebekah. Thanks for saying yes to this. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're excited. We'll see you guys next week. We'll be back every Wednesday at 6 a.m. This premieres on any platform that you want to listen to it. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.